Today my top 5 of little techniques that I like to apply to my mix to fix it. Hey guys, as you know, I worked yesterday 6 or even more hours on a track. I tried to improve it, didn't really work out, it actually got worse. And if you're a music producer, you definitely know that feeling. Today is the second day where I'm working on the track, trying to rescue it or at least get it to a point where it's better than the previous version. So today definitely not wasting any time, going directly into the track and trying to finally finish it. So again, in front of the Final Warnings track, I still like the musical idea, I still like the vocals, but I think I can't advance with this track if I don't start exchanging elements. For example, the kick drum doesn't really work on the track. I already tried tuning it to the key of the track. This helped a little, but I think that just the tone and the body and the support of the kick is just not working with the style of the track and with the bass of the track. So I will now just search for another kick sample and replace it. Okay, I think I found a nice kick as a replacement. The kick is really the most important, and I think if you have problems with a mix, finishing a mix and getting that professional sound out of it, the first thing for at least electronic dance music is to try out different kicks. It will help you a whole lot. It's the foundation of the track, and if the kick is wrong and not really working with the track, it will eat up a lot of space in the mix and it will be a lot harder to find a space for the other elements. Now that the kick is fixed, the next part that bothers me is actually the bass line of the track. I did it with a Diva and it's sitting a little too high, so it doesn't really connect to the kick. There seems to be like a gap which sounds weird in the track, and because it's sitting high it also collides with the pad sounds that are sitting on top of the bass. So we'll try and find a bass sound that is different and sitting a little bit lower. So let me try and explain the situation with the help of the analyzer a bit. This right here is the old bass line. And as you can see, it's a nice sine wave. It sounds cool, but it's sitting a little bit high, like between 60 and 100 Hertz, depending on the notes that it's playing. And if you now add the sub part of the kick to it, the two are pretty much separated from the frequencies, but they don't really connect. You can't really hear the side chaining, and they don't feel as one part. Because a lot of times people will tell you to separate the kick and bass, which is also true to some extent, but you actually want to make them work together. So if there's like a big gap in between of them, they sound disconnected and the track just doesn't groove. You don't really feel the kick and bass working together. So in this case, I just replaced the bass line sound to something that just works better with the kick. So just really quick, again, the old bass line. And now the new bass line. You can immediately see that there is like a lower fundamental note underneath, and this lower one works really nice with the kick. The kick still has its place in between, and the very low frequency is a little too much, so cutting away a little bit of the low end. And now comes actually the third part that needs a little bit of fixing. I have this pad sound in the track. That's the one we played in the day where we recorded. We had the recording session for this track and also recorded the vocals. And I like the pad sounds, I also like the chords, but I think they're sitting a little bit too high in the mix. They're too bright, so to make them darker, I could try out to just transpose them down by 1 octave, but then they're actually too low, so this won't really work. And my little trick is to just copy down the same synth and have one instance 1 octave down below, and this way you can control both tones, like the higher one, the higher octave one, the lower octave one, and get the perfect mix to make it bright but not too bright, and like dark and deep but not too dark and deep. This way you just have more control. It's basically the same as like having a low kick and a top kick, just to be able to control them separately. I tried stacking the low and the high chord sound, but this didn't work this time, so I used a lower one that actually has a different tone to it. So this right here is the lower one. And this right here is the sound that we had at the very beginning where we started recording the track. And now together with the low one, let's also add the bass line. And as you can see, they stack up pretty nicely. Now you have like a solid, well-mixed balance, and you just need the kick to cut through. Next up is actually the guitar part, which is with the pad chord step sound, the main instrumental sound of the track. I already made it wide to have more space for the vocals in the middle. That's what I usually do. I usually always use the S1 imager by Waves. It works fine, but here in this case I actually need to make the guitars even wider, almost, or probably get them into anti-phase, which isn't the best thing to do, because when you listen to the track in mono, it will just be cancelled out and you won't be able to hear the guitar properly. But I think in this case it's okay to do it just to have the vocals in the middle, have more space for them. So yeah, let's get rid of the S1 imager. This right here is the S1 imager. I turned the width all the way up, and here in the correlation meter of the analyzer you can see how wide it actually is. So this is already pretty wide, but I want to get it even wider. Here in this case I will get rid of the S1 imager and I will open up Logic's sample delay. What this plugin does, it's delaying one of the two channels by a couple of milliseconds. Here it's set to samples, but you can switch to milliseconds. So the right channel right now is delayed by 14.4 milliseconds. And that's basically already what makes sounds appear to be wide. If you delay one of the channels, it doesn't reach your ear at the same time. If it reaches the ear at the same time, it's perceived as a mono signal. If there is a delay on one of the channels, just a tiny delay, if the delay is too big, it will sound like a ping pong delay. But if it's a small delay, it will sound wide and appear to come from the sides of the speakers. And that's also what all of the widening plugins do. They just delay one of the channels, but they've also built in a correction, because if you delay one of the channels, the entire signal shifts to one side, but in Logic you can just correct it with the pan fader. With the 14.4 milliseconds of delay, it sounds extremely wide. It's probably going to be completely in the anti-phase. This way it just sounds really wide. If you want to hear an example of it, just maybe check out the new Kygo track with Selena Gomez. Not my favorite track, but at the beginning it's doing exactly that. There is a guitar that is just extremely wide, and this way the vocals have a lot of space and sit right there in the middle. The last thing I want to correct today are the vocals. They are stacked out of three parts: a left, a right signal, and a mid signal. I put already reverb on top of them, compression. I edited them, got rid of the noises and clicks that were in the recording, but it's now really just all about finding the right level, not having the vocals too loud so that they sit on top of the mix, but also not too quiet that you can't actually hear what the singer is singing. So just getting the right volume for the vocals is sometimes a bit tricky. And if you're not sure about the right volume, you can do an up and down vocal mix. That's usually what I do. I have one where the vocals are maybe a dB or 1.5 dBs too quiet, and one where the vocals are maybe 1 or 2 dBs too loud. And actually I also do that in some cases for the mastering, for the pre-mastering file that I take to the mastering engineer. This way, when he applies compression and the volume of the vocals might change a whole lot, he can switch to the vocal down or up version. It's not done a whole lot nowadays because you have more possibilities in the mastering process, but it's still nice to have for a mastering engineer. And at the end, this way you get a tiny bit better end result. So now that I'm done going through these 5 main things that bothered me in the track, it's time to go again through all of the channels, try to find little mistakes, get the overall balance and mix right, maybe trying out some different reverbs just to see if there's something that works even better with the track, and then hopefully being able to finish this one today. Pretty much all done with the track. I will still listen to it a couple of times later tonight at home with headphones, compare it to other tracks, of mine, and then decide if it's finally finished or it might need another day. Still not really sure, but it's a lot better than this morning. It helped a lot to exchange the kick and then also try out another bass that sits a little lower. It helped a lot to layer the main synth sounds. It also helped to check the width again on the main guitar, and of course also fixing the volume of the vocals. It's now Friday evening already, pretty late probably. Okay, it's not that late, it's almost 9, so I still might have the chance to go out, have a couple of drinks with friends, because Vanessa's tonight, I think she's on a birthday or something like that, so just a boys' night out. Maybe something wild, who knows. Back at home after a pretty gin tonic heavy evening, and I definitely have to adjust it. This isn't really true anymore thanks to the tonic. I think this is just way more realistic.